And one. Welcome to the last part from part A to part, I think this is G for project management, cost management level 5. I hope you are having a good time or you're healthy and happy and getting ready to get back to work. And hopefully, we will see each other very soon. But in the meantime, let us shut off this segment for cost management here. And today, we're going to speak about our ethical values as well as legalities within the workplace, and just touch base on. A couple of the principles and the procedures that we need to keep in mind both as project managers, of course, but also I think this is something that hits close to home for you as an employee. When you do receive your contracts, you know that it's a listed. There's a long list of rules and regulations which have you just operate consistently through your work environment and through obviously your everyday work processes. But then there's also that concept, should I say, or that focus on how you deal and how you interact with coworkers, the quality of your work. And the list goes on and on and on and on. So I want to start just at the on the high end of that, and where does this come from? Which is obviously from the law sector within South Africa. Um, and let's look at our first point, or let's actually start from the right hand side. You say the core public sector ethical values. We look for justice, fairness, integrity, responsibility, openness, accountability, stewardship, as well as competence. Where I could have a million and one South African related jokes, but doesn't matter what happens in our governmental sectors as individuals and work professionals. I know that you know that I know we definitely use this and apply this within our everyday working lives, right? So let's look at some of the theoretical points around the public service or public sector legislation, focus areas. Public servants shall perform their duties and arrange their private affairs so that public confidence and trust in the integrity, objectivity, and impartiality of government are conserved and enhanced. All right. So, again, I will repeat what happens, obviously, and I know that you know this, but at a higher level and at our state level is implemented down into and gives us guidelines, very strong guidelines as to how to run conflicts and how to run ethical values and how to run um, I say performance values within our companies. And so, as we go through some of these points, you'll absolutely, like I say, it'll hit home immediately, and you'll know exactly where the context fits in. Public servants shall act all times in a manner that will bear the closest public scrutiny and obligation that is not fully discharged by simply acting within the law. Hmm. So I mean, that is as clear as that is, it's got a little bit of vagueness in between there, and just says that look, within this box of law, like we need to be able to remember that as much and as many hours we do spend at work, it is not our home. Like that is that, and that's the safest way of moving forward. Like note that you're working into or you're walking into a professional environment, and there is actually no place for you to act personally, and of course have that environment. in some way relatable. When I say relatable, it refers to being comfortable, right? At any one point. Work as a professional, you'll act as a professional, I say, produce as a professional, and then also be, I say, appraised as and a professional. Public servants, in fulfilling their official duties and responsibilities, shall make decisions in the public interest, and in a conflict, which we'll deal with in just a moment, should arise between the private interests and the official duties of a public servant, the conflict shall be resolved in favor of the public interest. Let's move into a little bit, a couple of detailed theoretics here. Um, and just to give you some clarity, and then we'll get into some conflict resolution, a relationship with the legislation and the executive. An employee puts the public interest first by being faithful to the republic and honoring the constitution while executing the policies of the government, which I think is, I think is something that we all know, even though we don't, we absolutely do not think about that in our everyday work lives. It's insinuated, and we know by human nature what is right and what is wrong. So that is really about knowing when you're overstepping some kind of vague boundary, it's seemingly vague boundary, and when you do cross it, and you do get, I say, implicated with results because of that. Um, that should be no surprise. Your relationship with the public. An employee will serve the public in an unbiased manner. That's very important, especially in South Africa. Look, I say especially in South Africa, we have so many countries around the world that are a lot, I say when I say a lot worse than us in terms of prejudice and sexism and racism and just so many human rights that are absolutely non-existent. But at the same time, I might sound very cold-hearted, but I really don't live in another country. I live in this country, and I concern myself, as you should, with what happens in this country. So where the limits are in our country, and our obstacles and our battles that we are still fighting are very important to us as we grow as a country and as a workforce and as a professional, looking forward, to be able to be unbiased, okay, which is, I know, very difficult, having I say, quite a volatile history. There's always been a volatile history in South Africa, and that definitely has an impact on every single aspect of our lives, including our work. Relationship amongst our employees. That's coming within our own hands. And when you look at your fellow employee, yes, like there are different personalities. You will not. It's not the thing is, you're not supposed to be making friends. You're supposed to be working with colleagues, and that will always ensure that you work as a professional. Who cares about how they operate, and who cares about how they behave? It doesn't reflect on you in the slightest. And so your relationship would always be strictly professional, strictly, like I say, calm, collected, and with, I always say, if you have a document, or if you have something, like if you have data information, you can never argue with that. Don't argue with opinion. Don't argue with your heart. That's not where that's really going to get you nowhere. And don't also act with your heart. Performance of duties. An employee strives to achieve the objectives of his or her institution. Um, I love that. I've always worked for companies that I really love. Passion is always something that, I've had the luxury of being able to land up in a environment where I just love my job. So it's never been a problem for me. But I do understand that for a large majority of South Africans, have to do, a lot of different work, that is not that they're not passionate about. They have to do it out of need. Um, and sometimes it's also it's not only that, it gets to the other extreme where it is abusive and it is a lot of exploitation, right? So we know we don't want that. We want to be able to live and work in an environment where we can be encouraged and obviously cultivated to be the best version of our professional selves. I mean, that doesn't even make sense. If you look at a if I have to look at a boss, which I have many a time, I've come across many bosses of mine that are counterintuitive and they're counterproductive and they are really not good leaders. Okay, which is exactly what you should not be when you do become a leader within your current work environment or your next work environment. It boggles my mind to watch leaders that have no concept of being able to just understand that the better you treat your employees, the better they're going to do at their jobs. It makes absolutely no sense to me, but it does exist. It really does exist, and it exists in a quite in a large majority of our South African workforce. But it always starts at home. So for you, you just make sure that you always strive to do your best. You strive to look at how your actions are cost effective and they are beneficial to the company around you. You want to be a team player. You're a cog within a very big machine there. Um, and so that's really the right attitude to be going into work with. Of course, again, I say right attitude is always influenced by all the other things that I've mentioned just before, and hopefully a nice synergy of all of that can bring us all forward as we move through our career journey. Personal conduct and private interests, we all have bad days, we all have bad weeks, we all have bad months. In fact, currently, every single one of us are going through an incredibly hard time, and it is very difficult not to bring that to your work space. You understand, like your work life, because to switch off, just the amount of stress and the amount of worries and like I say, pressures that are affecting us all right now. It takes a lot of strength, takes a lot of courage, um, and really takes and really should be like you should be awarded a complimentary awarded, for doing that if you can do it to the best of your ability, right? We strive on through, we struggle on through, and we try to keep that in the back of our minds. It is totally understandable if you cannot do that every single day, every single hour, because you are a human being at the end of the day. As a project manager, like, you need to be able to understand people, your empathy, your level of empathy, and your grasp of empathy. So I've mentioned to you before that I work in media, and the biggest the biggest skill that a person in media has to have is empathy. And I think it's very applicable to a lot of industries out there. In this situation, as a project manager, if you cannot understand empathetically the needs and the situation, so sympathy is very different to empathy. Sympathy, I know that you're going through a hard time. I sympathize with you. Empathize is listen, I'm going to take your shoes, take them off, put them into I'm going to put my feet into them. I'm going to walk a day, a month, a week in them, and I'm going to understand what I see as a worldview from your point of view. And then I will start making decisions based on empathetically approaching a situation. So that is what a project manager and a really good project manager has as a personality trait. Let's look at some ethical values. So there's an ethical dilemma sort of on the one side. Ethical dilemma is a complex situation that will often involve an apparent mental conflict between moral imperatives in which to obey one, in which to obey one would result in transgressing another, aka ethical paradox, right? So very fancy writing. They're very fancy. Basically that in plain English and what we understand is when two worlds collide. That is an ethical value, right? It can happen both in an individual aspect. So I can have an ethical a crossroads, and it can be in so many different contexts, right? I can introduce an ethical paradox when I'm dealing with co-workers, a team, just the way that I might procure services or products or whatever, or inventory, whatever it is. Um, I hear of so many schools that they get funded, and this is both in the private and the public sector, where principals will, they will release the vendor, and they will just grant the vendor to somebody, and they will, let's say for now we're having a problem with as we have had a problem for how many years on being able to provide just simple plumbing, just toilets and running water in a lot of our schools that are one, not ready obviously to just open up after this entire crisis that's going to continue on for the next year or so. But going back to these tenders that are granted kind of like in a favoritism way, where a portion of that, let's say it's 300,000 rand that's been allocated, 50,000 rand of that is used on the actual task at hand, and 250,000 rand just boom, just goes away. And that is actually a story that I heard recently in one of our local private schools right here in Pretoria, and it's ridiculous. Without saying the least. I mean, geez, anyone would know, and anyone would think that's listening or watching this right now would say, "Yes, Chris, that is the obvious thing. It is ridiculous." Um, uh, it gets to I don't understand, and I sound quite judgmental, but I think I should be, and I think you should be too, when you hear something like that. And absolutely never want to be a type of person that just brushes off ethics, and does things in a selfish and a harmful manner. You can be selfish, but you can create no harm. But this, and in so many situations that we see around us, we see that people that have um, a little bit more power, just it just above somebody else, means you have by default power, executing some kind of unethical procedure, process, or action that is kind of harmful to the people that need to benefit from it. A partial listing of questions received by the ethical advance line: is it ethical to make an appointment to interview an arsonist sought by police without informing police in advance of the interview? Yes, I think that's fine. I mean, just coming again from a journalistic point of view, police police are I would say a procedural and a legislative I say a construct, whereas it's if let's say because I mean there is very little context here, so I'm just going to assume some context. So we're sitting here, and I'm sitting with an arsonist, and this arsonist maybe works for me, maybe it's part of, maybe this arsonist is a family member. I don't know. I would really like to understand for myself, because let's say the damage was done to me, and then I'm going to call the police as I would right afterwards. I'd like to also understand a little bit more and get my own insight. So I would think that would be a perfectly great way of moving forward. And don't abdicate yourself again from the power of knowledge and the power of ownership when it does come to dealing with ethical situations, right? Situations that have had adverse and very harmful effects on either your business or your business environment. Is the lack of proper attribution plagiarism? No, yes, it absolutely is. It absolutely is. There is no fine line between plagiarism. I've written books before. Um, I've written two academic textbooks, and there are very fine lines between how much you can use as reference material and how much, and just a direct line when it becomes complete plagiarism and an illegal form of conduct. Right. So, should a report write a story about a local priest who confessed to a sex crime if it will cost the newspaper readers and advertisers who are sympathetic to the priest? Absolutely, yes, you should, because that is the job of a local newspaper. I like the way that these are all, all media related. I can answer these with my eyes closed. So yes, it is your job and duty to perform and inform the community about all and any of the correct news. So fact and not opinion is the right way to go. The local priest has made his or her actions, and so there has to be repercussions for it. Sympathy and empathy does not have any place within I say communication. So, under what circumstances do you identify a person who is arrested as a relative of a public figure, such as a local sports star? I mean that answer will vary. I mean the way that I would identify is going to be very different to the one to how you identify, and so I think I'm going to leave that one up in the air and have you answer that for yourself. Freelance journalists and photographers accept cash to write about or take photographs events with the promise of attempting to get their work on the AP or other news outlets. So AP Associated Press, just so you know, um, in fact, just actually closed down after 38 years. It's a really sad sidebar. Let me not get distracted here. From which they also will be paid. Is that ethical? Yes, it is, because they are freelance, and the thing is that that is the whole that is the whole idea. They're not contractually bound to any one particular business. If you would like their service, or you like the I would say the fruits of their labor, then pay for them. It doesn't matter. Um, if they get the job done, then pay for them. Can a journalist reveal a source of information after guaranteeing confidentially if the source proves to be unreliable? Let me think about that. That's kind of a badly asked question. Can a journalist reveal a source of information after guaranteeing confidentiality if the source proves to be unreliable? No, that's the answer. Absolutely not. So a number of really good case studies and situations over there. Let's look at 9 strategies for managing conflict. That is, look, conflict happens within the workplace, whether you like it or not. I mean, you can be the most placid and the most I say placid in a very good way. You come in, you do your work, you're a team player, you're great at what, and there will be conflict because we have different personalities, right? The problem is also a conflict between colleague and colleague is actually quite normal. It's actually quite fine. We deal with it in with with a bit of a mediator who should be actually your boss or your immediate boss. The the issue comes when we have a problem with us supervisor, which needs to be immediately reported to HR. Unfortunately, I have worked in situations that if you do that, the politics are so extremely toxic that you're very welcome to go and report that, but then you see your job is at risk as well. So you can go and report. Depending on the severity of the action that a supervisor has inflicted upon you, or again you could be in a situation where which is very rare. I'm sorry, it really is. I've worked, like I say, in the corporate, the IT, the media, the educational sector, and never once have I seen an actual a fair like a completely fair result when if it comes to let's say a head manager or a supervisor versus um, like a subordinate. And I say that only because, geez, like today is another day. Please start and do it better, man. And I'm hoping that in Bongani, like that is not the case. And I hope that you guys, I have faith that you guys are doing it the right way. Let's look at a couple of conflicts here. Deal with it. Ignoring it is going to lead to increased stress and unresolved feelings of anger. Absolutely. You're going to go home, you're going to take it with you, it's going to ruin, it's going to eat at you. Like I mean, a lot of us are old. You know what? The beauty of getting older is that you worry less about anything, right? But also, it's not just natural. It's because we've been through situations like this, and as you grow. So if you're a young working professional in your 20s, you're still going to grow through the trial and tested areas of situations like this and many others. Um, but it just makes logical sense to immediately deal with something because it needs to one be dealt at that point because of the impact, and also the I say the severity of it will have greater effect if it is dealt with immediately. Why didn't you deal with it a week ago when it happened? Why didn't you deal with it a month ago when it happened? What are the answers then? Do you understand? Even if it frightens you just a little bit or intimidates you a little bit, if it is worth, so it's justifiable in having to go immediately have it resolved, do it. Okay, think it through before. Like it's exactly what I just said. Before addressing the person, you have to conflict, and I would not address the person directly. I would absolutely you always go to the manager that is in charge of whatever this is. You do not face the person that you're having a conflict with directly. Okay, consider discussing the situation with an objective party. There you go. Plan the strategy, including what you want to say, and then write it down and rehearse it. Yes, I do agree that rehearsing it, because only in the sense that when emotions erupt, you forget where you are. Does that make sense? So we've all been there. When emotions erupt, we just absolutely lose focus and we lose direction. And you want an outcome here that works for you. Do you understand? That's why you're going through all of this. Talk it out, face it out. Absolutely, it's a professional thing to do. Don't go in. I really don't. Attacking is not a winning strategy. I say stating facts is your strongest weapon when you're dealing with conflict. You take the facts, you say X, Y, and Z. I want to say nothing more. These are why this, and these are why. Like you are creating a particular problem, or this is creating a particular problem. Nothing more about how I feel, nothing more about how it makes my home environment feel. It doesn't matter. This or these are the facts, and this is what I want to be I want to be, approached and dealt with. Use a meditator if necessary, as I mentioned before. Always necessary. Always necessary. Apologize when appropriate. Yes, please. Oh my goodness. If you don't know how to apologize as an adult, you're not an adult. And I know it sounds very harsh. I'm coming across very harsh today. But the thing is that in situations and contexts like this require either very hard yes or either very hard no. And I think you can understand that. I know that you can understand that. Choose your battles. So when it's about choosing battles, it's not about backing down out of fear. Choose a battle you know you can win. That is the secret. Choose the battle you know you can win. You've got the information. You've done this correctly. You've gone through the right procedures. And you know that this is a situation that needs to be resolved in your or everyone else's favor. Because sometimes it really isn't about you against someone else, it's about you and everyone else just getting it done or getting this done right. Work on your communication skills. So, you should know because people normally tell you anyway. If at the very least you should know if you have no communication skills, you are very aware of it. And a communication skill is not something that you learn overnight. It is something that you start very slow, and you actually started in a personal environment where you're safe. So, for example, at home with your friends, with your family, with your neighborhood, with your acquaintances, and then to pretty much anyone, including your work environment. Avoid troublemakers as much as possible. Like I said to you before, you know what? You come in, you clock in, you do your work, you're a professional, you clock out, you go home. Who needs the extra drama? Really, that's safe for days of our lives and those amazing telenovelas on TV that are just super entertaining. But it doesn't belong in the workplace. It really doesn't. Okay, we're nearly done. Let's just look at a couple of factors. Your moral uncertainty. I've spoken to you before. Like it is something that I think a person will never stop learning. Never, ever, ever stop learning. Self-imposed dilemmas, depending on where you are in life, what is affecting you as well, will have an absolute direct effect on where your work and everything else, right? So my self-imposed dilemma will be absolutely different to your self-imposed dilemma because there are exponential amount of factors that have influenced my dilemma compared to yours. The world imposed dilemma is an ethical dilemma being forced upon an individual from the outside and is bound I don't like the sexism there, and he or she is bound by it to make a decision. And the prohibition dilemma, which is something that everyone will or has already been part of. Ultimately, ethical dilemmas require choices, and merely refraining from action can be a moral decision. In some moral dilemmas, one must choose whether to disobey a particular prohibition, such as a law, when compliance results in immoral consequences. In this case, inaction is obeying the law, but the result is morally reprehensible. All right, so I think there's this, and then okay, so there's a little example here, and there's an ethical example. So don't worry, you don't have to do any books, no general ledgers, no balances, and I want you to try and answer this for yourself. So your supervisor enters your office and asks you for a check for $150. So let's turn it into a couple of rands there. So we're talking about 2,000 rand, right? For expenses, he tells you he incurred entertaining a client last night, which is fine. You are allowed to take and you're allowed to woo, um, prospective clients that are coming along, but just wait for it. Here's where the telenovela kicks in. He submitted receipts for a restaurant and lounge, and at lunch from your supervisor at lunch your supervisor's girlfriend stops by to pick him up for a lunch, and you overhear her telling the receptionist what a great time she had at dinner and dancing with your supervisor at night before. Now we're very glad that they are having a great time. The relationship is healthy and that's wonderful. But they used company money. It's insane. You cannot. That is there's a legal term for it besides obviously theft. But but we know that this is absolutely wrong, and I want you to besides it, I've given you obviously the direct answer, which is wrong. I want you to go and list a couple of actions and reasons. Remember what I said to you: come with the data, come with the information. Don't come with the emotions. You will absolutely win moving forward. Let's end this off here. Disciplinary procedures are needed to let employees know what is expected of them in terms of standards and performance of conduct, identify obstacles to individuals achieving the required standards, and to enable employees to take an appropriate action, enable employees and employers agree to suitable terms and goals and time scales for improvement in an individual performance or conduct. Okay, I try to resolve any matters with recourse to an employee's tribunal, as well as act as a point of reference for an employment tribunal should someone make a complaint about the way that they have been dismissed. So disciplinaries are really not a great place to be, but they probably will happen at one point in your lifetime. We move over also to the CCMA, which is always, by the way, all on the employee side, not the employer side, because that's what they're there for. It's about carrying out. We know there are so many companies that, they might perform disciplinaries, but they also might, just completely fire you for very I say, very, very ridiculous reasons or unfounded reasons. And The thing is, if it goes to the situation, disciplinary documents are necessary, and the procedures in which we've had, or say the context in which we've had these disciplinaries are super important to be able to support uh, the 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 potential that we might land up at the worst case scenario, which is that CCMA. If you do get to that point there, you do want to obviously be found in your favor, and you do want to be able to be, be freed from that type of stigma that is attached to you. Grievance procedures are needed to provide individuals with a course of action if they have a complaint which they are unable to resolve through regular communication. Provide points of contact and timescales to resolve issues, and try to resolve matters without recourse to an employment tribunal. I think we would absolutely we would benefit from when we see each other to do some role playing. I would love to do that. I think it would be very effective. Um, and we'll definitely do that, and we'll definitely see each other soon. But I'm going to stop it there. That's the end of SP3. I think I hear a virtual round of applause. It was a really long learning unit there, and congratulations. We will see each other soon.